Hi, Sarah.
Hey Joe, how are ya?
I'm wonderful. How are you today?
Great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Where are you coming out of?
I'm in Metro Detroit.
Okay, Motor
Yeah,
City. I'm in
yeah.
Kansas City. There's a lot of
Okay.
similarities. I
Yeah.
when I've been up there, I always feel like this is kind of a sister city because of,
Oh,
the whole Motown, the echo of
yeah.
a different era, and it's kind of a gritty blue collar town. There's a
It
lot of things.
is. It is. It's coming back though, or
Yeah.
we're it's crazy what's happening in the city itself. I'm in the suburbs, but yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I always hear about it. In fact, I stayed in Royal Oak at one point. That
Yeah.
was a pretty hip area.
Love it. We lived there for a decade and now we're in the suburbs
Okay.
because we have a kid. So,
That's it. That's
as one
what
does,
happens. The
right?
great migration. I get it.
Yes, unfortunately, we're like, "Oh," every time we go back, we're like, "Oh my gosh."
I
Like,
know. I
yeah, it's
know.
hard. It's
I
hard. It's hard.
I actually reverted back to, well, I moved from the suburbs as a kid to urban living, and then when
Okay.
I had kids, I went back to the suburbs, and I just
Yeah.
always go back and I miss it. But that's
Yeah.
just growing up, I guess.
Exactly. It's life. We're like, "Okay, we know this is where our life is gonna be for now, so that's okay."
It's the proverbial Ben Folds lyric. It just
Yeah.
loops, you know?
Yes, exactly.
It's what it is.
Exactly.
Well, hey,
Yeah.
thank you for taking a minute out. I want to begin
Sure.
our conversation with what we went through for the last 3.5 years of the pandemic. How did you get through it,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
how did it change you?
Yeah. So as a therapist, I we were given the notice, hey, we're going on lockdown, just like everyone else did. And my business had to switch over in 3 days. And this was nothing I've done before. So that was alarming. I was terrified. Like, what does this mean? How does this gonna work? And I was scared. At that time, my daughter was, gosh, she was, 2 and a half. And
Mhm.
so being a mom and a partner and just being very scared about, like, the state of the world myself, and then having to flip business, thankfully was not that hard.
Yeah,
Everyone was like, "Okay," and now I continue to still do virtual sessions.
yeah,
So that has been a blessing, and I find that I can create a connection with people through the screen, which I was like, how again, everyone was like, what the hell? How is this gonna work? Right.
yeah.
Um, but it was a lot of dealing with people that actually work in the healthcare system. I have a lot of clients at that time that were in the healthcare system. And so that was really alarming. So it wasn't so much so as a sex therapist, I focus on relationships and
Yeah,
sexual health. But at that point, for I probably 6 months at least, we were all every session was just how are we making through this?
yeah.
And what do we need to do? So developing new coping skills and then how
Yeah.
to deal with your partner who's always home now or your children. So that was that was a
Yes.
big part of my work for a long time. So,
Well, you
yeah.
had to have seen an uptick probably, or
Oh
some
yeah.
level of substance that was different when all that happened.
Yeah, huge uptick in wanting sessions. I'm lucky that I don't ever like usually need more clients, but
Yeah,
at that point I was feeling bad to turning people away because
yeah,
they're like my relationship is on the rocks. And it was like 2 months after, we were still like, kind of in lockdown here. Michigan was pretty intense.
yeah.
And rightfully so. And I had people that would reach out. I was like, "No, I'm not going back to the office." And like, "Okay, well, we're going to wait until you do." And then they would call and they're like, "We can't wait. Please get us in." And so that was pretty consistent.
Yeah.
So definitely huge uptick in therapy clients for sure.
What I find fascinating about what you're doing is that of all of the things that human beings crave, we want love and we want intimacy, but we're
Mhm.
never really taught properly how to go about it. And we don't really know how
Mhm.
to do that. We have like boys find their dad's magazine thing,
Sure.
or boys and girls find the TV on late at night, and we just are never taught how to properly communicate all of that. So, from your line of work, what do you
Mhm.
see as the biggest fatal flaws that people just don't realize?
Well, I think you're kind of hitting it on the head is that we aren't taught this information. So,
Right.
the stats right now actually are very alarming because it's not magazines anymore and it's not late night TV.
Yeah,
Which is that's how I grew up.
right.
And but it's the cell phones and it's because everything is right there. I'm reaching for my phone, right? It's right here. Everything is right there. They're saying right now that the average age that a child sees porn is 8.
Yeah.
8 years old, right? So we're not getting taught in school because our
Right.
public school system sucks. I'm
Yeah.
just going to say that no matter where you live, you get the puberty class, which is usually around fifth grade.
Mhm.
If you're in your public schools, and then in ninth grade, there's a health class, usually taught by a gym teacher,
Mhm.
right? And who's going to teach you about menstruation and how not to get pregnant. They are Some states are required to teach you about HIV and STIs, and some are not, and
Yeah.
a lot only teach abstinence only when that does huge harm. There's so much data behind that.
Yeah.
So the fatal flaw is not having it popular education, and then also not talking about it at your home.
Mhm.
Right. So I work with adults that never got the information, learned from porn, or just trying to figure it out. And then
Yeah.
20 years later, they're like, I don't know how to have pleasure with my partner. So it's the lack of education that's the fatal flaw, and it
Yeah.
does so much harm.
Yeah, there's so much fog that's just over the regular mindset, and it just needs to be broken out, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's my
Disinformation.
mission.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's
right.
yeah, that
Yeah,
is my mission for
it's
sure.
very nice, and that's the thing, it's like, even with, like, love and relationships, it's the fabric of every book, every good
Mhm,
song, and we are all
mhm.
so misinformed about it. We go
Yeah,
about educating ourselves on antiquated languages we may never use, math systems that will probably never be broached, but
right,
everything, like they say, is right in front of you, and we need to know about it. It's
right.
very bizarre how we do things, you
Yeah,
know?
it is. It's alarming, and unfortunately, unfortunately for everyone, but great for me, keeps me in a job,
Yeah,
right? And I get to talk about the most amazing things with clients, teaching them about their bodies, teaching them about how to communicate effectively with others, including their partners or whomever they're dating,
yeah,
and then pleasure and consent, right? Like enthusiastic consent. That just because you're married doesn't mean you get to have sex with your partner.
right.
So there's a lot of things that I cover, and it's so enriching and amazing, but it is everyone needs this information. And
Yeah.
that's why I also, beyond therapy, I provide coaching and education and things like that as well.
So I typically ask, if you were in front of a bunch of third graders at career day, how would you
Yeah.
explain what your job is? But we
Yeah.
kind of have a handle, and that would probably be tricky. So I'm just going to leap,
Yeah.
unless you want to give it a shot.
I have a 6.5-year-old.
Yeah.
And so we have been talking about what mom does forever. I mean, she knows
Yeah.
that I'm on the computer. She's downstairs. She had a half day today. She
Yeah.
knows what I do. And so my basic third grade answer is I help people talk about their feelings
There you go.
because that's what I do.
That's it.
Right. Yeah.
So when you were in the third grade, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it was the dream for a long time. I went to a
Mhm.
very small private school, really liked going to school. I come from a family of educators,
Mhm.
and so really wanted to be a teacher. My background is actually in art education, or art, excuse me, art history. I was hoping to go to art ed, but then the program wasn't available. So art
Okay.
history, and then took a break and then went back to get my master's in counseling.
Are you a painter?
Yeah, I call myself creative. Like,
Okay.
I love to play with paint. I love to play with ink a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, India ink is really fun.
Yeah.
Um, Mandalas, like I was making sock monkeys for a long time. Those are really
Nice.
fun. So it's kind of like whatever. But
Yeah.
having a daughter, like right now and being 6.5, like we're coloring all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the row. So is that yours behind you? Did you paint that?
No,
Okay.
it's not. I
Okay, I was
love
just
it
curious.
though.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah.
It's very cool.
Thanks.
So,
Thanks.
so let's go back to where you were born and raised, and what were
Sure.
these seeds that were put into you to wanna be a teacher and to wanna
Yeah.
help people and to evolve to where you are today?
Yeah, so I was born in Virginia, Virginia Beach.
Mhm.
My parents were there for just a minute, but we are Michiganders by, by the family.
Yeah,
And so I was raised in Metro Detroit in the suburbs. My dad was a teacher for a while. My mother became a teacher. My aunt and uncle were both teachers. And so I saw them going to school as a young kid. My parents had me, I was born in the 80s, so they were
yeah,
babies. They were 21 and 22, or 21 and I don't 20.
yeah,
So, they were raising my sister and myself while raising themselves. So watching them kind of work and just seeing like the option that they had as teachers and being off all summer, like that was always as a kid really amazing.
Yeah.
But connecting with others, like that was really interesting. So that was kind of put inside of me and really just kind of flourished. I love to chat. But I like deep connection. It's not.
Sure.
I don't want to talk about the weather.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm,
it's crazy now these days, but like,
yeah.
I want the deep connection. Um, so that was kind of watching that, but I really had this love for art, and
Yeah.
so it was doing art history. I got to go to Italy in undergrad, and that was just amazing. And then no one was like, "Hey, you're not going to really make a living at this unless you're
Right.
going to Chicago or New York." And I had no money to do either.
Yeah.
Um, so I took maybe 18 months off. And then my aunt, who was an educator and then went to school to be a therapist, was like, you could do this.
Yeah.
And so I did. And my background was in art therapy
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
So I kind of mixed my love of art and teaching, but here and most states in the United States, it's not a billable service.
Right.
So found a job, got my full licensure, found an art therapy job, worked for a complete psychopath, who narcissistic person,
Yeah.
and got out of there and then
Right.
asked for help. That's my most important piece of my story is that I asked a friend for help and I said, "Hey, like, do you know anyone? Does your mom know anyone who would?" And she was a therapist. "Your mom know anyone that could help me get a job?" And she's like, "Oh, your mom wants you to come over and have lunch." And so I sat down with my best friend's mother, who is a social worker, and she's like, "Hey, what do you want to do?" I wanted to work with couples. I was the person that our friends were coming to asking for advice, helping our couple friends through issues. I was like, "I really want to do couples work." And she's like, "Well, if you want to work with couples, you need to know about sex."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, of course, you're genius." And she's like, she was the one who started the sexual health program at the University of Michigan
Mhm.
in Ann Arbor. And she kind of walked me through, "Hey, this is what you can do. This is how much it's going to cost. This is what you're going to make when you're done." And kind of was like, "Hey, you can do this." Like really pushed me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I left and I was like, "Okay, I'm going to do it." And I did it and it changed my life.
That's wonderful. So,
Yeah.
who's been a hero for you in your life? Who's been an inspiration?
Oh, well, my mentor Sally,
Yeah.
the one I was just speaking
Yeah.
about, she is the best. I love her dearly, and I lucky to have her. One of her daughters as my best friend. My sister, I have a younger sister.
Yeah.
We raised each other together. We were kind of. Oh, I come from a very interesting family background.
Yeah.
Mental health issues with my grandmother. Parents divorced when we were in high school. So my sister for sure. And I have a lot of brilliant and amazing friends that I got to grow up with.
Yeah.
So watching them all, one's several are physicians, one is a lawyer, and just watching them, one's a brilliant teacher, and just having them in my corner.
Yeah.
And those are my people, and
Right
that's who I
on.
look up to.
So, if you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now and spend some time with them, who would it be?
Oh, Esther Perel. She
Okay.
is a well-known sex educator and sex therapist based out of New York City.
Yeah.
She's written several books. She's got a great, amazing following. She's got a podcast. She is the sex therapist I emulate and learn from. So
Yeah.
I would die to have dinner with Esther.
So, I'm curious, growing up in the '80s, we saw
Yeah.
Dr. Ruth and we saw
Oh
these
yeah.
people. Were they really good? I mean, were they really dispensing good stuff?
I'd have to go. I was very sheltered.
Yeah.
So I have no idea. I'd
Okay.
have to go back and watch. I think people really keep Dr. Ruth up on a pedestal, and I think
Yeah.
it's probably there for a purpose,
Yeah.
because she was the one talking about it,
Yeah.
right? She got the information out there. I
Mhm.
think especially with sexual health, there's great information and there's bad.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say Dr. Ruth probably knew what she was talking about,
Yeah.
and I would
I
say yeah for
yeah,
that.
I would think so. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So, obviously with someone like Dr. Ruth,
yeah,
there's a lot of inspiration, a lot of motivation that goes into what she's doing.
yeah.
What is that for you? What gets you out of bed? What gets you to wanna help people and to be who you are every day?
Well, breaking generational patterns gets me out of bed every day.
Yeah.
Making sure that my daughter and her generation has all the information that they need. My clients, my partner, uh, we grow up as we've talked about, like everything is at our fingertips, but yet
Yeah.
there's this big part of our lives that we're not accessing. And so when I have a client come to me and say, I can't do XYZ, and we go through therapy and they go through pelvic floor, physical therapy, and we're talking about the emotional stuff, and they come back and they said, oh my gosh, I had pleasurable sex,
Hmm.
penetrative sex, or whatever kind of sex they had,
Yeah.
and they liked it. That gets me out of bed because that's life changing. And to have your own power with your pleasure is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. Of all of the clients that you've had, and obviously you need to be anonymous,
Yeah.
what is one of your favorite client success stories?
Oh, well, I think I kind of just shared that story. It is really the women that come to me that are in long-term partnerships or early partnerships, and they can't have penetrative heteronormative sex.
Right.
And they're like, why? What? This is what we've been told our whole lives, that this
Hmm.
is what, this is what we're going to do. And so kind of breaking down and peeling back the layers of what has contributed to that,
Yeah.
along with, if needed, pelvic floor physical therapy. Those are my favorite stories, and I have a lot of them to look back on. It's like, "Oh my god, you made such huge progress. You're a different person now, and you're loving your body and yourself, and you're finding pleasure all the time." And that makes me very, very happy.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, you ran into the 20-year-old version of yourself, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life, what advice would you dispense on that younger version of you?
Love this question. So that advice immediately would be start taking medication for anxiety because I
Yeah.
am a therapist with anxiety, and
Yeah.
it took COVID to get me medicated. And also probably having a little one.
Yeah.
So I would say get on meds because it's going to make your life so much better.
Yeah.
And to not procrastinate. Like,
Yeah.
I think that goes with my anxiety, right? But like to move forward, that you've got this, that your life is going to be amazing and you're going to help people and it's going to be meaningful. Because at 20, I had no idea what I was going to be doing.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
So of all of the things that you've done professionally, what are you the proudest of?
A great question. I am most proud of, I think, creating, oh gosh, there's a couple. Creating a very full practice professionally, like, and being the one that people refer to.
Yeah.
Not because I'm just a name, but because, the list of people, but because they know of my work and because people, their clients, are referring to me and creating a name for myself in that way. I'm also really proud of being able to do I just did a keynote presentation in Costa Rica this past year. So
Nice.
really proud of that and working on speaking. That has kind of just it offers another outlet of connection with others and
Yeah.
getting that information out there.
Hmm.
So, getting people comfortable with sex.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing better than that.
Right.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. So let me
mhm.
ask you this. Is somebody that was getting into art history and you really honed in on it, if you could
Yeah.
go back in time and watch any artist in their studio and their native space create, who would you love to see?
Mm, that is the hardest question.
Well, you could I guess you could throw a couple of them in there. It could be
Oh my
Gauguin and Van Gogh, that kind of thing.
yeah. I mean, I love Degas for sure.
Yeah.
Because of the multitude of mediums, right?
Hmm.
Like the sculpture and the painting and what was going and gosh, the time.
Yeah.
Um, Andy Warhol,
Yeah.
Uh, well, I mean, just to be a fly on the wall of that
Yeah.
studio, that
Yeah.
would have been amazing. Um, oh my gosh. I really like a lot of photographers, but
Yeah.
nothing like that. I just go like I want to see a great image, right?
Yeah.
So just to kind of see the process. But I think Degas for sure would be
Okay.
where I would go.
Okay.
Mhm.
So did you see good stuff in Italy?
Yeah, I did. We did the whole like typical, and actually just came back from Italy again a couple weeks ago. Very blessed to have gone with a bunch of other therapists to do a retreat.
Mhm.
But yeah, in undergrad, it was going to the Colosseum in Rome and
Mhm.
Florence and seeing David and
Yeah.
seeing, also the street art is amazing,
Oh,
and
yeah.
being able to just get into all of that
Yeah.
um was just soul filling. So,
Yeah. That's
mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends,
Yeah.
clients, colleagues. but
Uh-huh.
you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? I think that I am a leader. Actually, I know that to be true, that I'm a leader. I
Yeah.
think that I have a lot of spice that I can offer. um, I love to laugh and I really enjoy deep connection. And I think all of my people would say that as well. Um, and I think I'm always learning. Like, I
Yeah.
don't paint myself into the corner to be like, I am the expert on everything because I'm not. Right.
Right.
Do I know a lot about sexual health? Yes. But can I continue to learn? Yeah, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a mom too, which I love doing. And I've been with my partner for 21 years this year. So I kind of know a little bit about long-term relationship.
Yeah.
So those are the hats that I wear that I know to be true about myself.
The one thing that's tricky about therapy is that I think there's people out there that may not know they need it.
Ah,
So
yes.
if there's anyone out there that might be listening to this that's like, well, maybe this works for me, what would you
Mhm.
say to the collective population that's not sure if they're in a
Yeah.
place, but they're thinking it might work? How do you convince them?
You just got to try it. Right? Like that
Yeah.
I wouldn't even try. I would just, excuse me. I would say just try it out. Like
Yeah.
do the like you I always tell clients or friends that are looking for therapists to think of it as an interview. So when you talk to a therapist and you set up that appointment, that first session is an interview. You
Yeah.
have to make sure that you feel comfortable and that the therapist seems like you can vibe with them. That's
Mhm.
really important. But it's always helpful to talk about our concerns and thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
There's never going to be something that does harm by talking about your feelings.
Yeah.
And so maybe you do it for a couple sessions or maybe you do it for 10 years
Yeah.
because life happens and it's nice to have an unbiased person in your corner who's also going to call you out on your behavior. Be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, we're looping again. Like you're
Yeah.
doing that thing again. Did
Yeah.
you notice?"
Yeah.
So that's always going to be helpful for
Yeah.
people for sure. And we're
That's a
not
great,
scary. Yeah,
yeah.
we're just people.
Right.
We're just
Yeah.
people.
That's
Yeah,
it.
that's it.
That
Yeah.
that's it. It's a
Yeah.
great answer. So, Sarah, if anyone wants to hire you, learn more
Yeah.
about you, reach out to you, how do they do that?
Yeah. So my coaching website and retreat website is simplesexeducation.com. So you can sign up for my newsletter there, or you can find me on Instagram, and that is SWSX Therapy. Instagram and Meta are a little strange about the word sex
Uh-huh.
and anything having to do with sexual health. So you'll see a lot of acronyms that we make up for sex that
Yeah,
because we got to get around.
I get
But
it.
that's where I am primarily is that website for outside of therapy. I can only do therapy in the state of Michigan. So I do offer coaching, which is very intense work, and we focus on one thing. Like we're going to focus just on pleasure, just on something within the relationship. So that's at symbolsexeducation.com.
Cool. What
Yeah,
essential, wonderful work. Thank you for opening up.
thank
Thanks for your
you.
story.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Best of luck with everything.